Hi all, this is Allmighty and welcome to this video. So once again today we are back with a Fischer game, and once again it is a game from the Interzonal tournament in Portoroz. So like promised, I'm going to show you one other game from it. I mean, this isn't the last game, I'm still keen on showing you a couple of games more because Fischer played some interesting games in that tournament. And this game is particularly interesting, at least to me, because of two reasons. First, this is the first encounter between Bobby Fischer and Mikhail in an official tournament, in an official game, and yeah, it is very interesting to see what is the first result between the two. And also this is actually the first game that I'm covering on this channel by Mikhail. So for those of you who don't know Tal is probably one of the most exciting, most wild chess players that ever played the game. So he is a guy who kind of not coined the term sacrifice, but definitely is the guy who, when you think about chess sacrifices, you definitely think about Tal. And my advice to you, if you're new to the game of chess, or in general, if you just want to see some nice game, you should definitely check out the list of games by Tal, because he has a very long list of very exciting games, which plenty of sacrifices and plenty interesting positions. So I guess that is a very good introduction for Tal, and I think we should jump right in because the first video was a bit longer, so let's make this one shorter. e4, e5, knight to f3 and knight to c6. So yeah, going for the e4 standard for Fischer, and Ruy Lopez once again standard for Fischer. a6, and going bishop to a4, not capturing on c6, going for the exchange variation, and now knight to f6. We have castles, and now not knight to e4, going for a very popular nowadays Berlin defense, rather playing bishop to e7, going into the closed Spanish variation, so closed variation of the Ruy Lopez, rook to e1, defending the pawn, and now b5, bishop to b3, and castles by Tal. Now we have h3, a move virtually stopping the martial attack, and now d6. We have c3 preparing d4, and now knight to d7. So remaneuvering the knight, the first move played twice by the minor piece, so it is time to see what is actually the idea. Tal didn't continue with the development of this bishop. Maybe he wants to still keep it there to see if he will go on b7 or maybe on this diagonal. Yeah. Bishop to g4 is kind of stopped. So in this position, yeah, he probably wants to at some point play maybe king to h8 and push f5 and strike in the center that way. But here Fischer plays very actively, and he plays d4. And after knight to b6, the position unravels really quickly, because now we have d takes on e5, and now there are two options. So maybe, I mean, there is no better option here. It's just the thing with which piece you will take. If yeah, the pawn will take on e5 right away, then queen can exchange. Fischer can exchange queens, or he can play queen to e2. That's a possibility. But here, Tal plays knight to e5, knight to e5, d takes on e5, and now one other possibility arose, which is queen to h5, which wasn't possible in that other variation. And Fischer plays it, and he is kind of playing very actively and kind of aggressively, going for the attack right away with queen to h5. So he is kind of playing in Tal's style, kind of telling Tal that yeah, he is not afraid of him, and that he is definitely going for a win. So exploring this move, we can see that the e5 pawn is attacked, and there is this pressure on the f7 square. So Tal plays queen to d6, defending the pawn, and now knight to d2. Of course, with the idea knight to f3, bring the knight into the game. But we have bishop to e6, and now knight to f3, bishop captures, and a captures on b3. So the point is, you want to get rid of this bishop. Now there is no pressure on the f7 pawn anymore, and now, yeah, essentially the attacking chances for white have somewhat diminished. But now we have knight to d7, moving the knight away from the queen side, so once again going back, and you have to add another defender for this pawn. Maybe f6 was a bit better, but then you're kind of having a bishop that is kind of cramped, and keeping this knight here, because the next move by Fischer is b4, and this knight on b6 would now have an option to jump to c4. But okay, Of course, Tal couldn't predict what Fischer would play, so this is the current position, and now we have a rook from f to d8. Yeah, leaving the f7 square since it isn't pressured anymore, you want to have the control of the d file. Now we have bishop to g5, also possible was bishop to e3, and now f6. Since there are no light square bishops, Tal would like to play queen to e6 and control the light square, so after bishop to e3, queen to e6. And now rook from e to d1. You don't have to stay in touch with this pawn anymore, you can also put your rook on the d file. And on the other hand, by playing this b4 move, you kinda, took control of the a5 square, and this a6 pawn is staying here. So you want to keep the rook on the a file to keep the pressure on that pawn. And here we have c5 by Tal. Fischer disregards it, and he plays knight to h4. Instead, one other thing that I wanted to mention, instead of playing the rook to d1, knight to h4 was possible right away, with the same chances, with the same idea. Since Tal has played f6, now this f5 square looks like a very good square for the knight. But okay, first the rook was played here, c5, and not only now knight to h4. Now, instead of taking, I mean, he could have taken, but then knight to f5 comes right away, and after g6 you have queen to g4, and maybe the attack is maybe a bit faster. Here Tal decided to play, instead of taking on b4, first bishop to f8, and now after knight to f5, g6, queen to g4, play king to f7, moving the king out of the way. And here Fischer could have really got all in with a move such as queen to h4, playing a real Tal move against Tal, because you're sacrificing the knight and going for the attack. Here you have to play king to e8, and now pawn takes on f5, queen to f7, and now don't exchange queens, play queen to h8 and queen to h4, and we can see that black is in a kind of a cramped position with his pieces. The king is in the center. So yeah, I'm really interested, how would actually Tal feel in a position such as this, because he is usually in a position where, for example, he could have been white in this position. But okay, Fischer didn't go for it. He went for a bit of a strange knight to h6, kind of losing all of his activity there, because after bishop takes on h6, you don't want to take the bishop right away, because queen g4, h takes on g4, and now there is this g5, and this bishop is kind of in a problematic situation. King will come on g6, and yeah, there is not much white can do. So first, instead of taking, you have queen to e6, king takes on e6, and now bishop to h6. Of course, once again, g5 would have been possible, but now h4 is also a possibility, opening up the position. But here, instead of that, Tal decided to take on b4, and now c takes on b4, and still Fischer is left with the double pawns. We have a rook from d to c8, and now it's a position, it is drawn, but now players can show who is actually a better positional player and who is a better endgame player. We have bishop back to e3, so putting it back into the game, and rook to c4, attacking these two pawns. Rook to d2 and rook to b4, still keeping the pressure on e4 and on b2, and now doubling up on the d file. So Fischer goes for the double up, and he leaves these pawns here. We have knight to f8, moving the knight from the attack, rook checks, king to f7, and rook to b6. Once again, leaving up one pawn for the grabs, and I think Tal makes the correct decision. Rook takes on b2, because now you have two passed pawns, but it's not Fischer isn't lost in this position, because he also has his chances, and he shows them right away. Rook from d to d6, attacking this pawn here. And now Tal disregards this threat, and he plays a5, but this allows for Fischer rook to b7 check. King has to go to g8, and now Fischer actually had a chance to create a very big advantage with bishop back to h6. So the square where the bishop could have been taken, here now he makes a lot of threats, because there is this one big threat of Fischer, so Tal necessarily has to bring both of his rooks on the c file in order to block off the 7th rank, because now when he plays rook to c2, bishop to g7 is actually an idea. This knight cannot go anywhere, rook comes here, and after bishop to f6 there is this threat rook to g7, and then when king comes to h8 there are a lot of discovered checks. So here a rook can come to c7 to actually block this, but now rook to b5, and you can see that this pawn is attacked, this pawn is attacked, and Fischer would very much enjoy this position. But he decided not to go for this. He instead played rook to f6 right away, and now Tal finds the best move in the position, which is rook to e8, because after rook to f7, now knight to e6 is a possibility. And also the same move would have been played if bishop to h6 comes. So now rook captures on h7, and yeah, nothing can stop these two pawns, and Fischer can only give checks on the 7th rank, and position is essentially drawn. We have a4, rook to a7, and now Tal goes for a trick in rook to a8. If you take the rook, then king takes this rook, and then you can go for the promotion of the pawns. Here we have a rook from h to g7. So Fischer finds this move, because after knight captures on g7 you can capture the rook. King comes from f7, you give a check, and now black can either go g8 back and go for a draw, or he can go king to f6. But probably Tal didn't want to go for this because of bishop to c5 and bishop to e7 ideas. So instead of that, yeah, he didn't capture the rook. He played king to h8, and after this repetition, after this move, they actually agreed for a draw. So yeah, the first encounter ended up in a draw. Both of the players showed some chances, showed some style, and they had some chances, especially Fischer, but he didn't find that move that could bring him some advantage, and maybe after even a win. Actually, there is a story actually that Tal after the game said to his trainer Alexander Koblenz that Fischer probably had him in one moment with those rooks on the 7th rank. But okay, Fischer missed it, but it's okay, because yeah, Tal was in really good form at that point in time in that tournament, so I would say this was a good result. And yeah, this is pretty much it for this video and this game. In the future videos, I'm going to show a couple of more games from the interzonal tournament, so stay tuned for that. And that being said, I would like to thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.